In 1922, the League of Nations approved a new kind of passport for people whose governments no longer recognized them. War, revolution, and collapsing empires had left hundreds of thousands of refugees alive in the physical world, but almost invisible in the legal one. They had names, families, skills, memories, and places they once called home. What they lacked was a document. Without it, a border guard could stop them, an employer could refuse them, and a government could treat them as if they belonged nowhere. The travel certificate, later known as the Nansen passport, did not restore a lost country. It did something stranger. It placed institutional recognition onto paper. A person who had been trapped by the absence of a record could suddenly cross a frontier because a booklet carried the correct photograph, signature, stamp, and seal. The paper did not describe power. In that moment, it was power. Somewhere between the first marks pressed into clay and the identity documents stored on your phone today, human beings transferred memory from living people into objects, then placed those objects inside institutions. Once that happened, the authority to remember became the authority to decide who existed. Paper itself seems too weak to carry that kind of force. It is a thin mat of compressed plant fibers. It tears, burns, absorbs water, and costs almost nothing to produce at modern scale. Yet sheets of paper have transferred kingdoms, declared wars, erased debts, created debts, divided land, authorized imprisonment, recognized marriages, ended marriages, granted citizenship, and revoked it. A spoken promise depends on the people who heard it. A written order can travel farther than the person who issued it and continue working after that person is dead. That is the hidden advantage of paper. It separates authority from the human body. A ruler no longer needs to stand in a village to demand taxes. A creditor no longer needs to remember every loan. A priest no longer needs to personally repeat every doctrine. A government can send instructions across territory, store the response, compare it with older records, and punish anyone whose life does not match the file. Paper became the material on which institutions extended themselves through distance and time. The strange part is not that it became powerful. The strange part is that, after centuries of living inside the systems it created, we began to mistake written recognition for reality itself. Before writing, human memory was alive. It lived in bodies, voices, repeated gestures, songs, ceremonies, and relationships. Communities preserved genealogies through trained recitation. Boundaries were remembered through landmarks and shared stories. Agreements were witnessed in public because the witnesses were the archive. Knowledge of water, weather, plants, animals, marriage ties, debts, and obligations circulated through conversation. This did not make oral societies simple or unreliable. It made their information systems social. A fact remained strong because many people knew it, repeated it, and could challenge anyone who altered it too dramatically. The Inca governed a vast empire without an alphabetic writing system, using knotted cords called quipu to track quantities, labor, tribute, and possibly more complex information that scholars still debate. Oral specialists interpreted those records inside a living administrative tradition. Memory could fail, and powerful people could manipulate it, but it was distributed across communities rather than locked inside a distant archive. No single sheet could suddenly outweigh every witness in the room. That balance began to change when settlements grew large enough that memory could no longer hold every transaction, ration, field, worker, and storehouse. The earliest known writing systems did not begin with novels or philosophy. They emerged from administration. In ancient Mesopotamia, growing cities collected grain, distributed rations, managed livestock, and coordinated labor on a scale that overwhelmed unaided memory. Officials pressed signs into clay to record quantities and categories. Some of the oldest surviving tablets contain lists, accounts, and allocations of food and beer. Writing was not invented simply so people could express themselves. It was developed because institutions needed to count. Clay solved one problem and created another. A tablet could preserve information for thousands of years, but it was heavy, brittle, and inconvenient to move in large quantities. Papyrus in Egypt offered a lighter surface made from strips of a river plant. Parchment, prepared from animal skin, was durable and could be folded into books, but it required labor, animals, and money. Both supported powerful states, temples, and merchants, yet neither made writing universally cheap. Information could be recorded, but the material still limited who could produce it, how far it could travel, and how much an institution could afford to store. The next transformation would not come from a new alphabet. It would come from a cheaper surface. Paper developed in ancient China from techniques that broke plant fibers, rags, bark, hemp, and other materials into pulp, suspended the fibers in water, lifted them on a screen, and dried them into a sheet. The process sounds simple only after someone has learned it. It converts waste and vegetation into a surface light enough to carry, flexible enough to fold, and cheap enough to multiply. The traditional story credits a court official named Kai Lun with inventing paper around the year 105. But that version is too clean. Archaeological evidence suggests paper-like materials existed in China before his lifetime. Kai Lun may have improved, documented, or promoted a process that was already developing rather than creating it from nothing. The myth survives because institutions prefer inventions with a date, a name, and an official report. Paper's own history was simplified by the kind of record-keeping paper made possible. What mattered was not one inventor. What mattered was scale. Chinese administrations could produce reports, tax records, military orders, maps, examinations, legal documents, and correspondence without relying entirely on bamboo strips, wood, or costly silk. Paper made writing lighter. More importantly, it made administration expandable. As Chinese states grew more sophisticated, paper became woven into government. Officials prepared reports for superiors they might never meet. Candidates for public office entered examination systems built around written texts and written answers. Registers organized households, land, taxes, and labor duties. Archives allowed one administration to inherit the memory of another. A decision made in the capital could be copied and transmitted outward, while information from distant districts moved back toward the center. This created a new kind of vision. A ruler could not personally see every village, but paper could turn villages into columns of households, acres, harvests, and obligations. The population became legible. Once people could be counted, they could be taxed. Once land could be described, it could be assigned. Once duties could be written, failure could be proven. Useful things have a dangerous destiny. Eventually, someone tries to own them. Paper began as a solution for preserving information. It became a tool for making society visible to institutions, and visibility is rarely neutral. What an administration can see, it can also organize, extract, reward, relocate, or punish. By the way, if you have made it this far, you probably already see the pattern. This channel is not really about ordinary materials, it is about the systems hiding inside them. So if that kind of history interests you, subscribe. Now, back to the moment paper escaped one civilization and began reorganizing many others. The spread of papermaking westward is often reduced to a dramatic story about the Battle of Talas in 751, when Chinese prisoners supposedly revealed the secret to their captors. The encounter may have played a role, but the real movement was probably slower and more complex, carried through Central Asian workshops, artisans, merchants, and existing networks of exchange. In the Islamic world, paper found an environment prepared to use it. Administrators needed records across vast territories. Merchants needed letters, contracts, and accounts. Scholars translated, copied, criticized, and expanded bodies of knowledge from different languages and traditions. Mills appeared in major centers, and paper gradually became more available than papyrus or parchment. Books, legal opinions, scientific works, poetry, and commercial documents could circulate in greater numbers. Paper did not create the intellectual life of cities such as Baghdad. It lowered the material cost of sustaining it. When paper expanded into Europe, it encountered institutions still heavily dependent on parchment, but increasingly hungry for records. Merchants operating across cities needed ledgers and correspondence. Courts needed petitions, rulings, and copies. Monarchies needed tax rolls, diplomatic letters, military accounts. and laws that could survive beyond a single proclamation. Churches needed texts that could standardize doctrine and train clergy. At first, paper could be distrusted as less durable than animal skin. But cheapness has its own form of conquest. A material does not need to be permanent if it can be reproduced faster than the older material can be prepared. Then, printing transformed the equation. Movable type in Europe did not merely make books quicker to produce. It created demand for enormous amounts of paper and made identical copies politically important. Religious arguments, commercial notices, government decrees, maps, and pamphlets could move through cities before authorities understood how to contain them. Martin Luther's writings spread through print networks that no pulpit could match. During revolutions, short political texts reached readers who would never enter a royal archive. For a moment, multiplication seemed to weaken centralized control. Paper gave dissent speed, but institutions adapt faster than materials remain rebellious. The same sheets that carried unauthorized ideas soon carried licenses, censorship orders, police notices, official newspapers, and standardized schoolbooks. Printing did not destroy administrative power, it industrialized it. States expanded their archives and demanded more information from the people they governed. Births, deaths, marriages, property transfers, military obligations, criminal accusations, and tax payments became entries in systems that could be searched and compared. The signature gained legal force. The seal authenticated authority. The duplicate created proof. The form narrowed complicated lives into boxes that officials could process. A farmer's relationship to land became a deed. A young man became a conscription number. A traveler became a passport description. A child became a birth record. These documents could protect people by proving rights, inheritance, payment, or identity. They could also trap them. If the archive contained an error, lived reality had to argue against written authority. The witness could speak, but the document appeared objective. Paper had learned one of power's most effective disguises. It made human decisions look like neutral records. Colonial governments used this capacity with particular force. Conquest required soldiers, but long-term rule required classification. Administrators mapped territory, counted households, recorded ethnic and religious categories, issued permits, registered property, and converted flexible local arrangements into fixed legal descriptions. Land used through custom could be declared empty if it lacked the kind of title the colonial state recognized. Communities whose identities shifted by language, marriage, region, or circumstance could be forced into permanent categories on a census form. Once written, those categories shaped taxes, labor demands, movement, representation, and access to resources. The paper did not merely describe society, it reorganized society around the descriptions administrators found useful. A line on a map became a border. A name in a register became an owner. An absent name became evidence that no ownership existed. This is how memory became power at imperial scale. Institutions replaced local knowledge with official knowledge, then used the official version to judge the people whose lives had been simplified. By the 20th century, the document had become a condition of legal existence. Passports, identity cards, work permits, ration books, school records, medical files, and citizenship papers determined where people could travel and what institutions would recognize them. During wars, revolutions, partitions, and the collapse of empires, archives were destroyed or borders moved across populations. A family could remain in the same house and discover that the state around it had changed. Suddenly, proof mattered more than residence. People who had lived in a place for generations could be asked to demonstrate belonging through records they had never needed before. Refugees learned that losing a country often meant losing the documents that connected them to one. The Nansen passport was an attempt to repair this contradiction by creating paper for people trapped by the absence of paper. Yet the solution revealed the system's full power. A human being did not become more real when a certificate was issued. The institutions simply became willing to recognize what had been real all along. Today, much of the paper has disappeared, but its logic has not. Identity is stored in databases. Contracts are signed electronically. Tax returns move through online portals. Border systems scan passports and compare faces with records held elsewhere. Medical histories, credit scores, school transcripts, criminal files, and employment records can be retrieved without opening a cabinet. Yet we still call them documents. We still file, submit, certify, register, archive, and place statements on the record. Digital systems did not replace paper's architecture, they accelerated it. A paper archive could be slow, fragmented, and difficult to search. A database can connect a person's actions across institutions almost instantly. The old state wanted to make society legible. The modern system can make it searchable. The promise is convenience, speed, and accuracy. The danger is that an error can travel farther, a category can follow someone longer, and a decision can be made by people or machines who never encounter the life behind the file. Before paper, memory lived primarily in people. After paper, more of it migrated into institutions. That migration gave humanity extraordinary abilities. Knowledge could survive the death of its keeper. Laws could be compared. Scientific observations could accumulate. Distant people could coordinate. Individuals could prove ownership, agreements, citizenship, and rights against anyone who tried to deny them. But every gain carried a reversal. The institution that preserves your identity can also refuse it. The archive that protects a claim can erase another. The record that limits arbitrary power can become the instrument through which power operates. Paper did not merely remember the world. It taught the world that what is recorded is more trustworthy than what is lived. That idea survived the material itself. The most powerful sheet of paper was never the one with the most beautiful words. It was the one an institution agreed to obey. And the most dangerous absence was never an empty page. It was an empty space where a person's name was supposed to be. Paper turned memory into power by moving truth away from the witness and into the record. We still live inside that decision, even when the record is now made of light. Subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments which ordinary material or system you want history to make strange again.